Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World with me, John Jordan. So today I'm going to look at sort of some of the interesting social stuff that's happening with SOCCERVERSE. So I've done quite a lot of videos about the game. This is the first time I've sort of had to I'm going to say manipulate the community. I'm not really manipulating the community, but there's some things you can sort of do just because they're happening on the market. So particularly we're talking about transfers today. So normally if you want to go to the transfer market, you go to transfers, and you see what players have been put on the transfer market by their managers, and you can just bid for the ones you want. So if you want a defensive midfield player who's 37 years old, oh dear, but, anyway, he's ranked quite high, 70. You can go and bid for them and buy them. And obviously, if you're a manager of a club, you can go and put your unwanted players or players that you think you're going to get good money for on the transfer list. So that's how that happens, sort of from a market point of view. But what happens if there's a specific player that you want to be transferred? That may be for football reasons, that may be for other reasons. So I am the agent for 4 players. So to become an agent, you need to buy 5% of their influence, and then you can vote yourself in. Or clearly, other people who may have more influence may vote for themselves or vote for someone else. So anyway, it's not a done deal. So even there, you have this idea of sort of social sort of engineering. Anyway. This guy here is Ian Subiabre or something like that. It's not very good Spanish pronunciation. I've been trying to work out how to pronounce it, listening to things on a YouTube, but I'm not quite sure. Ian Subiabre. Anyway, something like that. So there's this guy. So this is the guy here. So he's really young. He's 18. He's the new gem of River Plate. Some people say he's only 18. He's not really played very much. So he's only played 8 games this season, 1 goal, 1 yellow card. So who knows? He may be great. He may be not great. But he is sort of one of those players that sort of when you're playing SOCCERVERSE, you're not really looking for players who are already, say, in the Premier League or already in one of the top clubs, because their ratings might go up and they might become more valuable over time. Clearly, if they're an 82 player, they might end up a 92 player if they're sort of very lucky. But a lot of players, what you're really looking for is really young sort of talent that may or may not happen. So more risky. So he's 18. He's rated 69, which is you would think he would be going up, but because he's so young. But obviously he might just break his leg and never play again. So it's always that sort of risk thing. So anyway, so I became manager of him because I was sort of just looking through various sort of players and sort of young players in South America, and who could be sort of talent who's very cheap at the moment in the game. And obviously that's the sort of the risk that you're buying talent in players who probably nothing will happen really with them in the long term. Obviously not very few players are the next Messi, as everyone says. Anyway, I was his agent, so that means I have some level of control about what's going on there, and also I get some of his wages as well, so that's another sort of nice thing. But it's sort of no point really me just being his agent if I can't sort of influence what's going on. So So the easiest way, sort of for me as the manager of Bolton, is to transfer him to Bolton. So how can I do that? Well, obviously I have to talk to the manager of the club that he was in. So he was in this club here, Matanzas in Cuba. Not quite sure how he ended up there. But there we go. So this guy or this person was the manager, but they were locked. So in SOCCERVERSE, anyone can sort of come in and take over a club that's not got a manager. So that's sort of the easiest way into the game, and you can play the football management side of the game there, so you can sort of set the tactics and that sort of stuff. But you can't. There's a sort of a deeper level that you can't do, which is transferring players. Because obviously you don't want people to come in and just sell off all the best players and buy them themselves. So there's sort of like some sort of gating in there. So if you're a locked manager, you can unlock yourself, but you have to spend money to do that. And quite a lot of players in the game are quite interested in playing the game, but don't have any money in order to do that. So they're looking for sort of people to unlock them. So I contacted this guy and said, I'm the agent for Ian Subiabre, whatever his name is, and can I buy him? And he said, well, yeah, fine, but you need to unlock me. So basically, I had to go in and spend some money getting influence in that club, so then I could unlock him. So basically, you go through a process where I voted this guy in as the manager, and obviously anyone who owns influence in a club can vote in anyone else as a manager. You don't have to do it for yourself. So I voted him in as the manager, and then nothing happened for a while. So he's sort of frantic messaging sort of to and fro, because obviously once he's in as the manager, there's nothing I can do, actually. He could just say, right, I'm the manager, I'm not going to do it anymore, or you could go through negotiations around that. So but anyway, he did agree, but we had to set up a time, because obviously he's going to put him on the transfer list, and that means anyone could potentially come in and buy him. And he's obviously a player. Ian Subiabre is a player that sort of people are looking at. So there would be sort of interest if he just came on the transfer list and was just left there and people were bidding. There would be quite a big bidding war. So we had to sort of time it right, and then as soon as he puts him on the transfer list, then I have to do the maximum bid, and that means I buy him straight away. So we can see here. I bought him for 1.74 million of the SBC token, which is it's not sort of super cheap, also not sort of super expensive. It's probably for his current rating, that's not a bad deal. But it was interesting where there was a sort of this negotiation happening, and I sent, as well as unlocking the guy in the game, I sent him some Soccerverse coins, and actually sent him some USDC as well, just to sort of oil the wheels of that sort of negotiation. So that's sort of cool. So that process went through, and I was really happy that basically we could sort of come to an arrangement around that. Obviously, this is a pretty minor sort of player. You can imagine for much sort of bigger players, there's a lot more sort of at stake. So much harder, and also when there's more at stake, there's more risk for managers not doing, for people falling out and not doing things, or people coming in and bidding more. So you get, but that's sort of obviously what happens sort of in real sort of football, where you have multiple teams and agents all involved, and who's going to offer more in transfer fees, who's going to offer more in terms of wages. There is that sort of thing as well, where there's sort of contracts and stuff. Didn't really get into that in this case, but you can sort of get into that as well. And there is also the interesting stuff, whereas people are playing as players in the game, you don't have to be a manager, but also so there's their own individual sort of well-being. They want to get assets and sort of kudos in the game, but also there's the club. So the club's assets, the club's money is separate from the individual players' money. And people who are playing Soccerverse. So there's sort of quite a lot of moving parts on there, and it sort of happened since that I tried to get some other players. I tried to get this guy here, and went to the manager. I think it was this guy here. Yeah, I think it was. Went to the manager and just said, I want to transfer him, and he just said no. so whether there's a negotiation that I need to do to go, well, I really really want him. So can we come to a deal? Can I pay you some money or something like that? Or whether he's just he sort of said actually there was a reason why he didn't want to sell him to me. In fact, so it seems a bit harder, but it's sort of interesting where this sort of stuff is much more the social part of the game, which the game happens to be about football, soccer, transferring players, doing scoring in the last minute, all that sort of stuff that happens on the pitch. But very quickly, it becomes this sort of idea of you don't formally have alliances, but you can sort of that there are already people in the game who sort of some of the bigger players in terms of their assets in the game are sort of like doing deals, and you can have this player for a few years, like having like feeder clubs, unofficial feeder clubs are already in the game. So it's sort of fascinating to see how already within really only sort of halfway through the first season of Soccerverse, and this sort of stuff is already sort of becoming more apparent for people who are playing the game. Obviously it's not everyone who's playing the game will get to that level. You need to have sort of be doing certain things and be interested in certain players who other people are also interested in, and then you get this sort of bartering thing going on. So it's sort of good to see that as well as all this sort of economic stuff going on there is this sort of other layer which is not unconnected to the economics of the game. Clearly, if people are sort of spending money and sending crypto to each other. Actually, had someone else reach out to me on Discord saying they wanted to buy some of my other assets as well, and they pay me in ETH and all this sort of stuff. So it's interesting how this really is sort of driving some mechanics and people prepared to spend money inside and outside of the game in order to sort of fulfill their aims. And it is quite interesting because that sort of stuff is actually more exciting, I think, than winning or losing a game. You just go through every week in Soccerverse playing games, and you win some, you lose some. For most players. but actually the sort of the social aspect of getting what you want out of the system is actually much more sort of exciting and much more annoying when it doesn't happen as well. So that's good. That's good to see, and I think it reminds me a little bit. Not that I play EVE Online, but often the EVE Online is this sort of space combat game, but it's the sort of social manipulation side of it behind the scenes that sort of really generates the headlines, or has done over the last 20 years. So it's good to see that sort of stuff happening already to a small degree in SOCCERVERSE. So thanks for watching. See you again soon.